Welcome to Where Passion Meets Purpose. I'm your host, Jen Mentesana. On this show, we help busy moms and entrepreneurs find more passion and purpose in their daily lives through inspiring stories and interviews. Welcome back, everyone, to Where Passion Meets Purpose. Today, I have the incredible Cristina Simmons here, and she is, first of all, an amazing human being, and I can't wait for you to hear her story, but she is a health and wellness expert. She's a certified nutritionist and fitness expert, and she is an occupational therapist. But more importantly, she has the most incredible story of perseverance and resilience, one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard, not just emotionally, but spiritually and physically as well. But some of the things that she has overcome and survived in her personal life, in her marriage, and just in her overall life are incredible. And I can't wait for her to share her story with you. So after all of this, I can't wait for you to just dive in and tell us everything that you've been up to and your personal story. And thank you so much for being here, Cristina.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. And I'm so glad to see you. I miss your beautiful face. Just excited to do this with you. So just let me know where you want me to start.
Absolutely. Well, I'll just say when we first met, I knew right away that you were just one of those kindred spirits, one of those incredible people that you want to have on your side in life. I think the first time that we met in Dallas at Amberly's house, actually, you came and you hadn't met me before in person, and you came and you showed up for all of us with those little bookmarks that had each one had a spiritual reading on it that was a passage from the Bible that you asked all of us if, we aligned with any particular message in the Bible. And I just thought that was just so incredibly thoughtful and such an incredible way to show your connection to God, your spirituality, but just who you are as a human being, and right away without even meeting you before. And right away, I fell in love with you, and I have been in love with you ever since.
I felt the same way. And that was just a small token. And I think that just speaks to you don't have to do big gestures in life. People really appreciate those small little gestures, just that, that somebody thought of them individually. So I think that's just a good lesson for life.
Yes. I mean, it's your time and it's thoughtfulness. It's giving someone a poem or a little book or a passage from the Bible means so much more than this big elaborate gift, right? And so I just got that from you right away. And then when you told your story this year on the stage in Dallas at the Unstoppable Success Summit, I mean, there was not a dry eye in the house. Your story is incredible. You connect with the audience in such an amazing way. You've written a book now called Eat Your Feelings, which we will dive into, and it's going to be launching this summer. And you're going to have a virtual book launch, which we're going to talk about here a little bit later. But why don't we start out with telling your story? Let's go back to at least the beginning of where you were in your life with your marriage when you decided to have children.
So my husband and I were married pretty young, 22 and 23. And it's funny because we were engaged only 3 months before we got, or we were dating only 3 months before we got engaged. So, and then we were married within the same year. So our romance was kind of quick. And we never really talked about having kids. We both knew that we wanted to, but we never really discussed it. And so when we got pregnant, we were super happy. And it was the first baby or the first pregnancy on both sides, for both the grandparents. And so everybody was super excited. But we found out when I was 6 months along that we carried a very rare gene that made very sick babies. And so our first daughter only lived 3 days. And then subsequently I had a miscarriage. And then we had 2 more babies pass away from the same genetic disorder. They never discouraged us from getting pregnant again because it's actually recessive. So there was a 75% chance of a perfectly healthy baby. And so, that's a big chance. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are people who hear diagnosis like this and they say you shouldn't have babies, for these things. And then they have a perfectly healthy baby. So you were thinking that your chances were good, that you were going to have a healthy baby.
but God had other plans because we were meant to adopt 3 children. So we lost 2 girls and a boy, and we adopted 2 girls and a boy. Our twins were born on Christmas Day, nonetheless. our twin girls,
Yeah, but you.
and the best Christmas present we ever got. Um, and then our son came along about 4 years after they did, and he is a huge part of our story, which we can get into too. But God gave us back everything that was taken, and but through all that, because you can imagine the grief and the depression that we experienced, especially me, uh, I came into the marriage without like strategies and coping mechanisms in order to deal with those types of losses. I'd had a little bit of a traumatic childhood. And so our marriage was soon in trouble because once you have twins, everything's about the twins. And that was great. I mean, that's what we wanted. And my husband loved the girls and he was on board with all of that. But somewhere in that, we lost our connection and we stopped communicating. And so he found someone else to communicate with for a little while. And so there was some infidelity, but Jesus has always been a part of our marriage. And my husband lost touch with that for a little while, but I prayed over him all the time. I think that as wives, we we do that. We just keep praying and praying over our kids, our husbands, everybody. And Jesus really convicted him to tell me about the affair, even though he didn't have to. And then through that, we have reconciled our marriage. We are stronger than ever now. We've been married for 26 years. And actually, I know this is going to sound kind of funny, but I'm grateful that he did what he did because it really turned me to look inward and take ownership of my part of the relationship, that I was not upholding my end of the bargain. I was not talking to him. I didn't love myself. And so how could I love him? How could I take care of the kids? Because I was just living in total survival mode. Just I had not processed the loss of our children, and then all these other things happened. And like I said, I had never really processed the trauma from my childhood in the beginning. And so I kind of took on that everything is my fault. That was kind of how I grew up as a kid. Like I didn't feel like I had a voice, and nothing I ever did was good enough. And so in my adulthood, because I was carrying the babies, like I made the babies. And so I felt for a long time that it was something that I had done wrong, which obviously I realize is not the case now, but I didn't have the tools back then to know the difference.
Wow, Christina, there's so much to unpack there just in what you shared and how much of your story, maybe not the part of losing your three babies, but how we all operate sometimes in life when we've been through trauma and we choose not to deal with it and we don't have the tools, so we bury it and then we build what I call a robot or a shell around our heart, to keep going. And when that happens, then of course you're going to shut down and not be able to give to someone else, and especially a partner, and especially someone that you're going through this with, because you're dealing with it, he's dealing with it, and you're both in survival mode and protection of just, being able to operate daily. And so this is such a common thing for so many people, no matter what the tragedy, no matter what, the childhood experiences, when we don't have the tools to process and to share and to open up and to learn how to communicate. And our generation, and every generation before that, didn't have that. I mean, our kids are so fortunate. I say this so often. They're so fortunate to grow up in a time where we communicate with them and we talk to them about sharing their feelings, and it isn't taboo to talk about pain and trauma and all these things. And so it's no wonder that shut down. But the fact that you took responsibility for that part and didn't blame your husband for his affair, I mean, I can tell you there's a lot of women I know, and me included, who may not be able to do that after infidelity.
Well, it was it was a little bit of a different situation, and I really realized that he was hurting just as much as I was, but that was another problem is we grieved differently, and we didn't know how to help each other because every time I would try to talk to him, I would cry. and it upset him when I would cry. And so then he wouldn't ask me questions so that I wouldn't cry, and I wouldn't tell him things so that he wouldn't see me cry. So it kind of became this sort of unspoken communication that we were no longer communicating about anything that was serious. And of course, now I realize that that is not the way that you process grief or depression or any of those things. And that's why the name of my book is Eat Your Feelings, because that's what I was doing. Instead of talking about what was bothering me, I would just go to the pantry and eat to not think about it.
That is so, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's a really important topic that we should probably dive into, not just because of the book, but really the coping mechanism of eating for numbing the pain. Like some people choose alcohol, some people choose a shopping addiction, some people choose gambling. Um, so many people in America, and I'm sure all over the world, eat their feelings, and why this book and the title of your book is going to resonate to so many people. I mean, my husband grew up in a big Italian family, and their everything is about food. Everything, celebration and sorrow, right? So everything is about you avoid conversations by cooking and going in the kitchen and eating and finding something to eat. So, fortunately he wasn't using it as a coping mechanism, but he didn't learn to communicate or talk because everything was just about food. So it's a definitely an issue for so many Americans. And so you really, this was your coping mechanism for the pain, for the lack of communication. And so where did that take you?
Well, what I was going to say was, like you were saying, that a lot of people turn to alcohol or drugs or those kind of things. And what makes it so hard when your drug of choice is food is that you can't not eat. If I were an alcoholic, I could stop hanging out with my friends who drink, or I could not go to the bar, or I could not go to restaurants. I have to eat food. like, like I had to learn how to have a better relationship with food, which started with me. I didn't love the woman in the mirror. I didn't even look myself in the eye in the mirror for years. I didn't even realize that I wasn't doing that. I would get ready in the morning and I would fix my hair and I would do my makeup and I would look at my outfit, but I never looked myself in the eye because it was uncomfortable for me. And so that really working on loving myself in every aspect, the physical form, the mental me, the spiritual me, helped to recreate that relationship with food, with friends, with my husband. Like it changed everything. And I think that's a big part of what I like to talk about, is that you have to take care of yourself first, because I also couldn't take care of my kids the way that I needed to. I was projecting my anxiety onto them, which now I'm seeing in my girls' adulthood, which is a regret that I have. And I can't change that, but I can help them with the coping mechanisms that I've learned all these years. But I think that's another thing, as a parent, we don't realize that we're projecting our fears, our anxieties, our worries onto our kids without meaning to. So we really have to be conscious of the energy that we put into the world.
As we all say, little eyes are watching all the time, and they're absorbing, and they're not just listening to what we're saying. They're absorbing what we feel,
Hmm.
and they're taking that on themselves. I definitely can relate to that during a period of time in my life when I was struggling emotionally and just mentally, and my kids were young enough where they were around all the time, and I definitely didn't have the patience or the I didn't love myself at the time either, and so that was projected on to them. So I completely relate to that. I want to get back to what you were talking about, though, about how you had to learn to love yourself again. And what was that process like? Were there specific things that you did, or was it just a mental shift?
It wasn't a fast, it wasn't like I figured this out. Just like one day I was like, oh, I have to change things. It was very slow, but it started with my husband's affair, because I realized that I wasn't taking care of myself physically. And because of all the grief, we all know the body keeps the score. I was very inflamed. I had chronic pain. I wasn't sleeping. And so I was puffy. I had gained a lot of weight. And so I really started looking at what I was eating, why I was eating it. And then I got into working out. And I'm a little bit obsessive with everything that that I do, just kind of my overachiever personality. But when I go into something, I go full on. And so I got a little bit obsessed with the gym, but I found a community at the gym. I had gym friends, and picking up heavy weights, it regulated my nervous system. Like I figured that out pretty quickly, that I needed that in order to stay calm and to get through every day, and for my mental health, because when you're depressed and anxious, that fog comes on and you can't think, and I was working, but I think again, it's because when I was working, I didn't have to think about all my other problems. So I was sort of a workaholic too. Like anything that I was doing outside of the house, I was really good at, but I couldn't do work and the kids. You know what I mean? And for a long time, I couldn't, yeah, I couldn't get like my workouts and my nutrition. Like either I worked out all the time or I dialed in my food, but I could never get them like on board together. So I just kept losing and gaining the same 30 pounds. I'm sure there's so many women that can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we do really, I mean, your intentions were all there, which is amazing. Like you got to that place where you're like, okay, working out feels good. I can take care of myself and love myself again. And this is part of the process. But now I need to learn how to then combine that with being present in my marriage, being present with my kids, and having, work and not struggling there either. And that balance, I mean, we talk about that balance all the time, is never perfect. There is no, I mean, I always say, and everyone knows I say balance is bullshit because I don't know that you're ever truly completely balanced. Some days you're like this, some days you're like that, but you're on this teeter totter kind of just trying to get as close as you can, and it's always a work in progress, and there's no absolute. And I think that's the time where we let go and we allow ourselves to just say, okay, I'm going to prioritize these things. And some days it's going to be heavier over here, and some days it's going to be heavier over here. And that's okay. And you get to this place where you accept that that's what it is. But it is a journey. Like you said, it doesn't happen overnight. And it's one of those things that you just first have to make the decision to make the change and find those things that do help you get back to the place of loving you first. So then you can give back to the others.
Yeah. And I think I'm very spiritual. And so that played a big part. And I really had to start looking at the way that God sees me, not the way that I see me, because having a father, um, and this is all in the book, but having a father, an earthly father, that he did the best he could. And I loved him, even though he was very hard to live with, but he was very hard on me. And I know at his deepest core, it was because he believed in me and he knew that I had a lot in me to give, but he pushed so hard, and it made me feel like I was worthless because nothing I ever did was good enough. And so that's how I saw myself. And so I had to really look at how my heavenly father sees me, and that I was perfect just the way that I was made. And so that, I think, was the true catalyst. But, people get so hung up on the magic pill or the one thing, or there's no one thing. It's a lot of things, and it's a lot of work. But
It's a lot of work, and you're right, and there is no one thing, but I'm gonna go back to something you said before, is that sometimes the catalyst is your deepest pain, and it does take you accepting and going through it in order to come out on the other side. And so, like, when you said it was your husband's affair and then acceptance that of looking at yourself through God's eyes, like, those moments are the things that help you, the platform that gets you do the work to change and to make your life go forward in a different way. It takes sometimes those horrible things for you to see.
Well, and I think we have to really learn acceptance because as an overachiever, I want to have control of everything. And I really had to work on there are a lot of things that are not in my control. I mean, it doesn't matter which way you spin it. I have no control over these things. I had no control over the fact that I carried a rare gene. I, I can't have my own biological children. I had to accept that. And I think that because I had a really hard time accepting that, I was really, really in a bad place. And it was kind of one of those things, we talk about the reticular activating system. Well, when you've lost a baby, everybody you see is either pregnant or holding a baby. Like everywhere you look.
I mean, I relate to this from the infertility journey that I went through. It was like the 2 years that I was trying to get pregnant, and everybody around me was getting pregnant, all my friends. It was like in my face constantly. And so, yeah, it is one of those things that you really have to say, you do. Even my infertility doctor said to me, I said, "Is there anything else that I can do?" And he said, "Yeah, prayer."
Yeah. Well, and once I let it go, my girls came because that Christmas that when I said that they were born, I didn't even want to do Christmas. I wanted to cancel Christmas altogether because my husband's cousin had had a baby. And so it was going to be his first Christmas, and we were going to have to go with family and watch him open his presents. And I just didn't think I could do it. It wasn't because I didn't love him, and it wasn't because I didn't love her. Um, but I just didn't think I could handle it. And then I was praying one day, or probably complaining, to God.
I love that term.
Yeah. And it just came to me like it's not their fault. You know what I mean? Like you need to be happy for them and celebrate this with them. And as soon as I released it, we got the call at 10 o'clock Christmas night that the twins had been born. I mean, it was really just, yeah, it was just a, like unbelievable miracle. Just couldn't believe it.
It's so amazing. And for those of you listening, this is how it happens. It's the letting go of the need to control the outcome. I remember my fertility specialist telling me, I've never met a woman who didn't have a baby that wanted a baby. You have to let go of how it happens. And that's the truth about life. You have to let go of the control of the outcome because the thing that you want most, if you're holding on to it too tight, exactly how it's supposed to happen and when it's supposed to happen, the universe can't do its work. You're holding on to the energy. So you do need to let go and release to let God and the universe do its work. And it comes in the right time and the way it's supposed to happen. And 9 times out of 10, it's more amazing than you ever imagined it could be. And so I think that's true for whether it's having a baby or the love of your life coming into your life or that career or that opportunity or that money to finally come into your bank so you can pay your mortgage or whatever it is. Let go of the how. How happens when we let how go. And I had a business coach once that told me that and I went, huh. Okay, I'm just gonna start to trust. And it does, it happens. But you do need to let it go and you need to trust that there is a bigger plan for your life.
Well, and we're in this whole entrepreneurial space, and everybody is always talking about how when you're in alignment, that things just come. These unbelievable things just come, and you don't understand it until you're like, oh, that's what they meant. Because for a long time, I was just clinging on to so many things. I mean, for dear life, because I thought that I had to, I thought I had to pray harder, but it wasn't the praying harder. It was the releasing of it. You have to say the prayer and then release it so that he can do his thing.
So good, Christina. So, so good. Well, I hope all of you heard that because that is a really important lesson that I needed to learn as well. My used to Someone used to say to me, You can't be pregnant and have the baby in 3 months. It happens, and it takes the time to happen the way it's supposed to. So I've learned to let go as well. And there is, it's all doing all the work leading up to that, that really takes you to the place of living the life and having the things that you want to have in this lifetime. You have to do the inner work, and you have to go through the pain and the process of getting through all the stuff that's holding you back so that you can then let it go and open up to receive. So it's a beautiful message. Okay, let's dive in a little bit. Couple things. I want to talk a little bit about, your nutrition, your health and wellness, coaching, what you do for women, and then we'll dive into talking about the book.
Okay, so because of all my trauma, and I truly believe this, I do want to do some more research on this, but I believe that I was thrown into early menopause because of all the trauma. And because I went into menopause in my 30s, but I didn't realize that that's what was happening because, my doctors, I was too young. My tests were okay. Everything was kind of borderline or whatever. But once I finally figured out what was going on, I'm like, I've got to do something about this. And so I have tried just about every program and plan and diet and everything and supplement, everything out there. And I finally found one that was specific to perimenopause and menopausal women. It's called the Faster Way to Fat Loss. So I got my certification to be a coach with that, which is with the fitness and nutrition. But I love, again, it was community. That's what I really loved about that program. Kind of the same thing with us being an Amberley's mastermind. I've always had a lot of trouble with friendships and relationships, but it was the same going back to I wasn't happy with myself. So how can I learn to make a friend happy? How can I be a friend if I don't even know what I need? I can't give them what they need. Um, so anyway, so that's how I got into the fitness and nutrition because I thought I love this program. I love the community. They're very faith based and faith led. And so I said, I'm just going to get my certification in that. And so I do that on the side along with all the other author and speaker and pediatric
All the things.
occupational therapist. Yeah.
You're
Why
doing all
not?
the things, Christina. Before we hit record, we're just sitting here talking about how we're jumping from one thing to the next, juggling everything, but we wouldn't have it any other way. And you're an incredible speaker. I cannot wait to read your book. I cannot wait to read your book. And I want our listeners to know your book is coming out this summer, but you are going to have an official virtual launch online on July 3rd. And tell us a little bit about that. And I'll make sure that we have the link in the show notes, and I'll be, pushing that out there on my social media as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So it's going to be on Zoom and it's just going to be about 15-20 minutes. And it's just to get everybody online, have a little Q&A, and then they're going to give out the link to purchase the book so we can all purchase it together. It's going to be so exciting. I'm probably going to be just bawling tears.
Oh my
This
gosh.
has been so much work. I mean, you've been writing your book too. So it's so when you put your heart and your soul, and there's so many things in that book that are very personal, and to know that it's going to be out in the world is scary, but I just, I'm doing it to help other people. And I truly hope that it's a help. And also, I forgot to tell you this, but I love an organization called A21. They're a global organization that fights against human trafficking. And so $2 from every book sold is going to go to A21. So that's why I really want as many books sold as we can so that I can give as much money to that organization as I can because they're very near and dear to my heart.
Oh my gosh, Christina, that is so generous of you. And I'm super passionate about that cause as well. Thank you so much for doing that. And I'll make sure to put the link to that organization as well in the show notes so people can go and find and read about
Yeah.
that. And if you are someone who can relate to the title, Eat Your Feelings, you definitely want to be on that Zoom launch. And I'm certainly going to be there as well, supporting Cristina and the launch of her book, but learning more, asking questions, learning more about her story. Didn't even get to scratch the surface of so many things that you've gone through, your surgery, just so many things. So I know your story is going to resonate with every single one of our listeners, and a country full of people who have been through pain and have numbed through eating. They're going to be able to relate to your story. And thank you for having the courage to write the book. I know how challenging that is because, as you said, I'm in the middle. I've actually just finished my second manuscript. I sent it off to the editor, so hopefully next step is getting to the publisher. But I remember a time where I was going through writing, and I reached out to our little group of amazing, unstoppable ladies, and you all encouraged me and said, "This is no longer about you. This is about the people that are going to read this book, who are going to resonate with it, to help them go through what they're going through." And that really helped me because I started going, getting a little stuck about sharing some personal things that I felt like maybe I shouldn't be sharing. And you said, no, your story is going to help someone. And I am so grateful to that, and so grateful to all of you, because it got me through that. And so for those of you who are, have listened to this episode and, resonate with Cristina's story, please go and follow her. What are all your social media handles, or anything how people can follow you?
So my website is CristinaPSimmons.com. Cristina with no H, Cristina. But I'm most active on Instagram, but I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. So all the places that we go for social.
Exactly. I know LinkedIn, I've been spending a little more time on lately, and it's kind of fun to see how it's growing and evolving. But yes, Instagram is kind of the go-to these days. I think everybody is on Instagram. So we'll have all that information in there. Cristina, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I mean, you are a light in everyone's lives that I know. And I'm so grateful that I got to share this time with you, that I got to have you on the show before your book launch, and get the news out there to all of our listeners. So thank you again. And
I feel the same way about you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Of course. And for all of you who've joined us today, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again for listening to Where Passion Meets Purpose. If you're enjoying this show, please subscribe and download it so you don't miss an episode every single week. And if you think you have a friend who might benefit from listening, please share it with them as well. If you'd like to contact me, you can always reach me through email on my website at jenmentesana.com, and my social media, Jen_Mentesana. And you can DM me there, and I'll always respond, and we can connect about topics on the show or anything else you'd like to discuss. Thanks again for tuning in.